Morning, everybody. We all like tall buildings, and on May 4, 1973, the Sears Tower in Chicago was finished. By the way, we're in Exeter, Rhode Island, about an hour from our house, at a tulip farm called Wicked Tulips. The husband is from the Netherlands, and the wife is from Rhode Island. The Great Pyramid in Egypt was the tallest structure on the planet for about 4,000 years, but it was not inhabitable. And that becomes an issue for people as they look at the height of buildings. Do people live there or not? Cathedrals are both structures and buildings because the spires are not inhabitable, but the bottom part is used by people. And another tall structure is the Washington Monument. It's kind of like the Eiffel Tower. They were tallest at one point, but they were not inhabited by people, so they're considered structures, not buildings. The E.V. Howard Building in New York City was the first use of a passenger elevator. This is 1857. So for some people, this is maybe the earliest skyscraper. But most people who study this agree that this is the first skyscraper, the home insurance building in Chicago. And it had a steel frame with curtain walls, so the walls were not load-bearing. The steel frame was, so that made it pretty unique. In 1930, the Chrysler Building was built. This was the first building in the world to break 300 meters in height, so it was the highest for a while. But the next year, the Empire State Building was built, and that was the first building to have more than 100 floors. And for a long time, this was considered the tallest building in the United States. So our story begins in Chicago. Back in the 1900s, Richard Sears and Alvin Roebuck picked Chicago for the headquarters because of the railroad. It was a capital of the Midwest. And by the time we get to 1969, they wanted to consolidate all their various buildings in Chicago. Sears was the largest retailer in the world in 1969. So they picked this spot and they started building the Sears Tower. There was some pushback, but not much. And the building went ahead, and it's basically 9 tubes put together. So if you look at it from the top, a bird's eye view, it almost looks like a Rubik's Cube. And this was a real revolutionary design and very influential in the building of super tall buildings later. So here's another picture of the Sears Tower being built. Again, it's 9 tubes put together. And when it was finished on this date, May 4, 1973, it had a lot of cool things. One was it was the tallest building. It had a cool observation floor at 103. And if you look carefully here, you can see that they had a glass cutout that was attached to the observation floor. So great view of Lake Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, just a great view of the region. Well, things changed for Sears, didn't they? Sears basically went out of business. The building was sold, resold. Now it's known as the Willis Tower, but most people still call it the Sears Tower. In May of 1981, Dan Goodwin, wearing a homemade Spider-Man suit, used suction cups and other things to climb the tower, got arrested, but the judge dismissed it. And later, a fellow from France, Alain Robert, climbed the tower just using his bare hands and feet. So good for him. I guess it was quite slick when he got to the top. You might recall in 1986 at Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the group goes to the Sears Tower to look out from the observation booth. Well, today the Sears Tower is number 3 in the country. Number 2 is the Central Park Tower in New York City, which opened just a year ago. And number 1 is One World Trade Center in New York at 1792. This opened 9 years ago, and that's in Lower Manhattan. Maybe some of you have been to it. Now, the tallest building in the world is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, but notice it's a series of tubes put together, inspired by the Sears Tower in downtown Chicago.